The sun was not yet up when Ivan stumbled into the yard of his home in Nové Davidkov. His hands were raw, the skin cracked and mapped with deep, ingrained dirt. Every time he tried to clench his fingers, they spasmed. He leaned his forehead against the rough flank of his ox, his breathing ragged and shallow. For months, the neighbor had dragged him out of sleep at midnight, forcing him to haul heavy loads until his back felt like splintering wood. The oxen were his only hope for a life of his own, yet they were currently the tools of his ruin. He looked at the yoke, then at the horizon, his jaw set in a hard, jagged line. "I cannot live like this," he whispered to the empty air. He reached for the latch, his fingers shaking as he unhitched the heavy wooden frame. The animal shifted, sensing the change. He took the lead ropes, pulled the oxen toward the gate, and stepped onto the road. The fair at Berehove was his only chance. The fair at Berehove was a chaotic roar of livestock, but buyers were ghosts. Ivan stood for hours, his hope eroding as the sun climbed. He turned back, his shoulders heavy with the failure. On the road, he met a man struggling with a cow and a calf. "A cow is a farm in itself," Ivan muttered, his eyes wide with sudden, misplaced logic. He insisted on the trade. The man accepted. Ivan walked away with the cow, but the beast dug her heels into the dirt, refusing to move. He dragged her until his lungs burned. A merchant with an empty cart passed by. Ivan traded the cow for the cart, thinking it easier. The wooden frame was a dead weight. Every muscle in his body screamed as he hauled it 2 kilometers before his legs gave out. A man with a goat appeared. Ivan traded the cart for the goat, hoping for something lighter. But the goat was restless, pulling at the rope until Ivan's palms bled. Then, a man with a goose approached. He warned that the goat would ruin his orchard. Fearing the loss of his trees, Ivan traded the goat for the goose. A traveler crossed his path with a hen. The man spoke of legal trouble and neighbors, warning that geese were a magnet for disaster. Ivan, terrified of prison, traded the goose for the hen. He walked only a few hundred yards before the bird's comb turned a sickly, bruised black. It collapsed in his arms, dead. A passing gypsy stopped, eyeing the carcass, and tossed a small leather purse into Ivan's hand. Ivan took it, thinking it a vessel for savings, though it was empty. He sat by the road, staring at the leather, when his kinsman pulled up in a cart. They stopped at a tavern. Ivan spent the last of his energy and the empty purse on drinks, recounting his day of ruin. The kinsman leaned back, his laughter sharp and loud. He mocked every trade, every step, every failure. "Your wife will throw you out for this," the kinsman sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. "I bet my oxen and cart against your farm that she will be furious." The innkeeper stepped forward, eyes wide, and agreed to judge the outcome. The stakes were set. Ivan stood, his face pale, and began the long walk back. Ivan pushed the door open. The air inside was still, smelling of dried herbs and wood smoke. He stepped into the center of the room, the kinsman and the innkeeper crowding the threshold behind him. They waited for the explosion. Ivan began to speak, his voice cracking as he laid out the day. He told of the cow that refused to move, the heavy cart that broke his back, the goat, the goose, and the hen that died in his hands. He described the empty purse and the tavern drinks, leaving nothing out. He braced himself, shoulders hunched, waiting for the shout or the strike. The kinsman leaned forward, a smirk fixed on his face, ready to claim the farm. But the room remained quiet. Ivan's wife stood by the hearth, her hands resting on the table. She did not raise her voice. She walked toward him, her gaze steady and clear. She reached out, placing a palm against his shoulder, her touch light and firm. "As long as you are healthy," she said, "we have everything we need." The kinsman froze, his jaw dropping. The innkeeper burst through the threshold, his face pale with shock. He shoved past the kinsman, his finger jabbing toward the door. "The bet is lost," he shouted, his voice echoing against the rafters. The kinsman stood paralyzed, his smirk replaced by a hollow, defeated stare. He looked at the wife, then at Ivan, finally understanding the weight of what he had witnessed. He turned without a word, walked out to the yard, and unhitched his team. He led the oxen and the cart to the center of the path, leaving them there for Ivan to claim. Ivan looked at his wife, then at the sturdy animal standing in the dust. The gamble had been foolish, but the outcome was absolute. The kinsman retreated into the distance, leaving Ivan and his wife standing together in the quiet yard, the oxen finally home.